My heart is buried with her, Part 2. Chapter 14, The Letter I Don't Remember Writing. I don't remember sitting down. I don't remember uncapping the pen, or pulling a sheet of paper from the drawer. And yet, somehow, there it was, laid out before me on the desk, ink still glistening, the scent of Eleanor's perfume curling around it like breath caught in time. A letter. Written in my hand. Neat, practiced, precise, the same way I had written every one of my letters to her since the day I buried her. The loops, the spacing, the slight downward tilt of my lowercase gs, all unmistakably mine. But I had no memory of writing these words. None. My name signed at the bottom. No date. No crease in the page, no signs of hesitation. Just a single sheet of ivory parchment resting atop my desk like it had always belonged there. I read it once. Then again. And by the third reading, my hands had started to tremble. My dearest Eleanor. I dreamed of the mirror again, but this time you weren't in it. I was. Only. I wasn't myself. I looked through the glass and saw you watching me with those eyes that always knew more than you ever said. I heard music in the walls, but the melody kept unraveling. You used to say I rushed the third note. I still do. Maybe that's why I keep losing you at the bridge. I'm trying to remember. But I think you left something in me. Something I can't name. It hums. It aches when I speak your name out loud. It stirs when the clock stops ticking. I think I've been dreaming you forward and writing myself backward. Are you waiting for me to catch up? Or are you the one falling behind? I don't know what's happening anymore. I only know that when I touch your ring, the shadows grow quieter. Please, come back again. I swear I'll wait. I swear I'll remember this time. Yours? Matthew. I stared at the paper. The ink wasn't dry. And the words? I had never written them. Not consciously. Yet they carried my voice, my grief, my memories, and something else. I picked up the pen from the desk. It was warm. And beneath it, another note. Folded, smaller. Like a secret whispered from behind a door. Eleanor's handwriting. You did write it. Not now. But once. Before. You've written to me in every life. In every ending. And I've always tried to answer, even when the veil was thick and silence was stronger. But now, the house remembers too. That's why you're hearing the music again. That's why the walls echo when you speak. That's why the ink won't dry. You asked if I'm falling behind. I'm not. I'm standing right behind you. I froze. Not from fear. From knowing. Because I felt it. That soft exhale just behind my neck. The air shift. The whisper of fabric brushing against mine. Not a breeze. Not a draft. Huh. I turned quickly, heart in my throat. No one. Only the study. The candle. The desk. And the grandfather clock, once again ticking, now at a minute past midnight. I looked back at the letter. One word had been added at the bottom, in her hand. Almost. Chapter 15, Her glove on my pillow. I didn't expect to sleep. Not after the letter I didn't remember writing. Not after the way the candle flame had bowed to an unseen breath, or the way Eleanor's final word, almost, lingered in my mind like a key pressed softly into a lock I hadn't known I'd been guarding. And yet, sleep came. Uneasy, broken, threaded with the weight of too many memories. I dreamed of her, not as she was in life, but as something quieter. A whisper behind doors that wouldn't open. A silhouette framed in golden dusk, standing at the foot of the garden arbor, her hands folded gently before her as violets bloomed where she stepped. Her face was turned slightly away. Always just enough that I couldn't see her eyes. She didn't speak. But she smiled. And the moment I reached for her, I woke. It was still dark. A few hours before dawn, judging by the cold blue hue slipping through the gap in the curtains. The house was silent, but not empty. There was a presence in the stillness. Not pressing. Not haunting. Waiting. I shifted to sit up, and then I saw it. On her side of the bed. Resting gently against the pillow, soft as breath. Her glove. Cream-colored. Silk. Delicate stitching at the wrist. The kind she wore to concerts, to garden parties, to Sunday service when she was feeling particularly elegant. One I hadn't seen in 3 years. I had donated the last pair, or so I thought. I reached for it slowly, my hand trembling more with reverence than fear. It was warm. Not from sunlight. Not from my own body heat. Warm from touch. Someone, something, had placed it there. Just before I woke. I lifted it to my face and closed my eyes. The scent of her perfume still clung to the fabric. Soft. Familiar. That same blend of fig and ash and faintly crushed violets. A memory returned unbidden, her laughing as she tugged off those gloves one finger at a time, tossing them over her shoulder as she stepped out of her heels in the hallway. A lady peels herself away in layers, she'd once whispered with a smirk. You just have to know how to listen for the rustle. I smiled. I wept. And then I noticed the slip of paper, folded just beneath the glove. I picked it up, my breath already catching before I read it. I didn't want to wake you. You looked peaceful. Like you used to, before the clock stopped ticking and the mirrors forgot our names. I borrowed the book you left on the nightstand. The one with the pressed flower still inside. I missed that story. I remember how you used to pause on the sad parts, just to make me look up. I'll return it tonight. P.S. Check the window latch. It creaks again. I know you hate that. E. I stood and crossed the room to the window. I pressed my hand to the glass. There, on the outside, was another fingerprint. Small. Delicate. Pressed in the condensation that had gathered during the night. I reached for the latch. It creaked. Just as she said it would. And from the hallway beyond the bedroom, I swore I heard the faintest sound of fabric rustling, retreating down the stairs. Chapter 16, I found her diary in my desk. I hadn't touched the bottom drawer in months. It stuck. Always had. Even when I applied oil to the rails or jiggled the handle, it groaned like something ancient, something resentful of being disturbed. Eleanor used to joke that the drawer was sulking. Let it stay closed, she'd say with a grin. Some things like to sleep. But that morning, the drawer was open. Not wide, just enough to notice. A finger's width. As if inviting me. As if whispering, now, Matthew. Now. I stared at it for a long while before reaching down. The wood no longer stuck. No groan, no resistance. Inside, a single object. A book. Leather-bound. Worn. The edges curled slightly, as though it had been carried often, perhaps pressed too tightly against Eleanor's chest. I recognized it immediately. Her diary. She never let me read it. Not out of secrecy, she just believed that some things should be spoken only to the page. If I tell it to paper, it doesn't get caught in my chest, she once said. It breathes without echo. After she passed, I never found it. I searched every drawer, every box, even between floorboards. I assumed she had destroyed it before the end. And yet here it was. Placed in my desk, in the drawer that never opened. I lifted it carefully, the leather soft beneath my fingers. There was no title, no name. Just the faint imprint of her initial on the cover, E. I sat down at the desk, placed the book before me, and opened to the first page. Blank. I flipped to the second. Also blank. My chest tightened. Page after page, nothing. Dozens of leaves, each untouched. Not a word. Not a mark. But as I turned to the final page, ink. Fresh. Still drying. My breath caught in my throat. Matthew. You finally found it. I've been waiting for you to open this book. It doesn't speak to silence, it needs your voice. Read aloud. Only then will you remember. Start at the beginning. You've already written the ending. I blinked. And when I turned back to the first page, words had appeared. As though breathed onto the page by ink only visible through presence, through memory. I read the first line aloud. May 17th. The roses bloomed early this year. Matthew said it was a sign. I said it was just the earth being generous. But part of me hopes he's right. I like when life listens to love. My voice trembled. The words on the page shimmered, glowing faintly in the candlelight. And new lines began to form beneath the first. Like someone was writing from just behind the veil. I read again. May 18th. He fell asleep on the sofa with the book still open. I didn't wake him. He looked so peaceful, even though the story had turned sad. He always reads the saddest parts like he's afraid I'll look away. And with each word I spoke, more appeared. Eleanor's memories. Moments I had forgotten. Details only she could have recorded. But they weren't old, they were happening again. Written in real time. As I read. The diary was alive. Not haunted. Present. I turned the page. Another entry faded into view. Tonight, I touched the mirror. It was cold at first. But when I said his name, it warmed. I looked up. The mirror across the study shimmered. And for the first time, I saw my own reflection, joined by another. Not clear. Not full. Just a faint outline. A shoulder. A strand of hair. A hand near mine on the desk. She was reading with me. Chapter 17, I dreamed she was cold. Sleep came uninvited that night. It took me while the candle was still burning, while the ink on the diary page still shimmered from Eleanor's words. One moment, I was reading aloud, her memories falling gently into the room like dust in sunlight, and the next, my eyes closed not from exhaustion, but from something deeper. As though the house itself had laid a hand on my shoulder and whispered, "Rest. She's waiting." I dreamed. Not in the abstract, not in fragments. No. This dream had weight, air, scent. I stood in the garden, Eleanor's garden, but it was winter. The arbor was bare, skeletal vines clawing at the ironwork. The roses were gone, and in their place, frost bloomed like tiny white scars across the earth. She stood in the middle of it. Eleanor. Wearing the midnight blue dress I buried her in. Barefoot. Still. Her skin pale, almost grey at the edges, like moonlight carved into flesh. Her hair hung loose, drifting slightly even without wind. She didn't speak. Just watched me. I stepped forward. The sound of my foot on frozen ground echoed too loudly, as though the world had forgotten how to hold sound. "Eleanor," I said. She tilted her head. And then she smiled. But it wasn't joy. It was longing. The kind that aches more than it warms. I reached for her, but she stepped back. "You're too warm," she whispered, voice as soft as snowfall. "It hurts." I stopped. "You're cold," I said. "Let me." "I don't mind the cold," she said. "I only mind when you stop writing." Tears burned my eyes. I moved forward again, slower this time. She didn't retreat. I stood inches from her, and even in the dream I could feel the chill radiating from her body. Like touching absence. Like pressing your palm to a memory. "Why are you here?" I asked. Why now? She looked up at me. Her eyes were not sad. They were full. Because the house remembered before you did, she said. Because I left too quietly. Because you never finished the letter I asked you to write. What letter? But she was already turning. Walking toward the arbor. And beneath it, the ground opened, just slightly. The earth shifted. A narrow crack in the soil. And inside it, I saw paper. So many sheets of paper. All in my handwriting. All buried. You stopped writing before the end, she said. I fell to my knees, reaching into the ground. But when I touched the pages, they burned. Frostbite and fire, laced together. I cried out. And she turned back to me. Finish it, she said. Then. She was gone. The arbor empty. The garden white. And I awoke. Gasping. Still in my chair. The candle dead. The room cold. Too cold. And on my lap. The diary. Open to a new page. One I hadn't reached yet. And written in her hand. I dreamed I was cold. But you touched me, and I remembered warmth. Please, don't stop again. Finish it. Chapter 18, The Portrait Watches Me Now. I hadn't seen the portrait in years. It had once hung in the music room, centered above the hearth in a place of quiet honor. I remember the day we brought it home. Eleanor hated it. It's too formal, she'd said. Too stiff. That woman in the frame isn't me. But I had insisted. It was painted not long after our wedding, a gift from a family friend with a talent for capturing things just before they disappeared. And though she claimed she disliked it, she'd sometimes pause as she passed it, glancing at her painted self like one might look at an old photograph of someone they once were. After her funeral, I took it down. I couldn't bear to see those eyes, too alive, too knowing. I wrapped it carefully, placed it behind boxes in the attic, and told myself that one day, when grief softened, I'd find the strength to bring it back. But I never did. Not until now. It was waiting for me in the hall. At the foot of the stairs. Unwrapped. Hung. Centered precisely where I had always imagined placing a mirror. I froze when I saw it, my breath catching the way it does when you stumble upon something that knows you before you know it. Eleanor stared back at me from the frame. Not as she was in death. Not pale, not still. But vibrant. Timeless. Eyes deep, dark, touched with that same quiet fire she had when she challenged me to dance in the rain, or when she read poetry aloud with tears in her voice but none on her cheek. She wore the blue dress. The same one from the dream. The same one I buried her in. But her expression had changed. It wasn't the same one I remembered from the painting. This Eleanor watched. Waited. Her gaze followed me as I stepped closer. Not subtly. Openly. Boldly. As though the canvas itself leaned forward. And at her feet, painted into the lower corner of the portrait, something new. A letter. Sealed with crimson wax. Tucked just beneath the hem of her dress. It hadn't been there before. I know it hadn't. I stood before the painting, heart pounding, and whispered her name. Eleanor. And then. The painting shifted. Not the frame. Not the wall. Her eyes. They flicked downward. Toward the floor. My body chilled. I turned. There, resting on the floorboards beneath the portrait. A letter. Real. Folded. Sealed with crimson wax. I knelt, breath shallow, and picked it up. Inside. You finally looked at me again. Asterisk, do you know how long I've waited for that? To be seen? Not remembered, not mourned, but seen. There are still more things I need you to find. You locked them away. You told yourself it was mercy. But I never asked for that. Go to the closet beneath the stairs. The one you nailed shut. The music box is still inside. It remembers what we tried to forget. I looked back at the portrait. And I swore. I swore she smiled. Just a little. A soft, knowing curve of the lips. Like the beginning of a secret. Or the end of one. Chapter 19, The letter wasn't for me. The door beneath the stairs hadn't opened in years. It had been sealed not long after her funeral. Not out of superstition, but sorrow. One stormy night, not long after I buried her, I found the door ajar, though I hadn't touched it. Inside, boxes of keepsakes, old photographs, the music box we bought in Prague on our honeymoon, still wound, still playing. And a sudden wave of grief so dense, so overwhelming, I collapsed where I stood. That was the night I nailed it shut. I told myself it was symbolic. A closing. A boundary I wouldn't cross again. But Eleanor had asked. And Eleanor never asked lightly. The nails came free easier than I expected. The wood splintered softly, as if the house had been waiting. I opened the door. Darkness greeted me, not hollow, not empty, but quiet. The kind of quiet that grows in places long forgotten. The air was cool and still, thick with dust and memory. I lit a candle and stepped inside. There it was. The music box. Silver. Delicate. Carved with lilies and roses. Still intact. And beside it, a bundle of letters. Bound in black ribbon. I lifted them carefully. The top one slipped free from the stack, fluttering open across my palm. Eleanor's handwriting. But the name. To Simon. I froze. Simon? I didn't know a Simon. Not from our life together. Not from her family. Not from mine. I opened the letter. Simon. I don't know if I'll ever send this. But writing to you helps me breathe. Matthew watches me like I'm slipping away, and I suppose I am. But when I write to you, I feel less alone. Less like a ghost pretending to be someone's wife. I think the house knows. I think it's listening. Sometimes I hear music from rooms we don't enter. Sometimes your name echoes in the walls, softer than a whisper. This isn't betrayal. It's memory. And memory is all I have left. Forgive me. Eleanor. My breath caught in my chest. Simon. Not a lover. Not a brother. A presence. A part of her life I never knew. Someone she confided in. Someone the house had absorbed. I fumbled through the rest of the bundle, heart pounding. More letters. All addressed to Simon. Some short. Some frantic. One stained with what looked like blood, or ink so dark it swallowed the candlelight. The last letter in the stack was sealed with gold wax. When I opened it, the paper fell apart in my hands. But the signature remained. Scrawled not in ink, but in ash. Yours? S. Not Eleanor. Simon. And on the back of the page, pressed so faintly it looked like it was meant to be hidden, were 5 words. You were never the only one. I staggered back. The music box clicked open behind me. The melody it played was familiar. But not ours. Not Eleanor's and mine. Someone else's. A sad, strange waltz that made my bones ache with knowing. And from the shadows of the closet, a voice whispered. He remembers, too. Chapter 20, She's trying to warn me. I didn't sleep. The name, Simon, rattled through my mind like a coin dropped into a deep well. Each echo heavier than the last. I couldn't place him. Couldn't picture a face. And yet, Eleanor had written to him. Loved him? Trusted him? Feared him? I returned the letters to the desk, locked them in the drawer. But even there, they felt like they pulsed, like the paper itself was breathing. I poured tea, though my hands shook too much to drink it. I lit every candle in the room. Shadows moved anyway. At sunrise, I found the next letter. It wasn't where I expected it, not on the bed, not on the desk. It was beneath the kitchen window, tucked beside the worn teacup I'd used the night before. Eleanor's handwriting. Pale. Shaky. Matthew. I'm trying. I swear I am. But the house is louder now. Not with us, with him. I see Simon sometimes. In mirrors. In corners. He watches me when I speak your name. He hates it when I write to you. He wasn't always like this. I think he came here with the house. Or maybe the house came with him. He pretended to love me. You know how that feels, don't you? Someone loving only the pieces they want? The rest, he tried to bury. I buried him instead. Or I thought I did. He's waking now, Matthew. Because you're remembering. Because you're listening. And he knows. You have to find the mirror, the one in the cellar. The one I shattered and covered. I tried to hide what I saw. I couldn't face it then. But now? I think you must. Before he shows you himself in another way. I love you. I'm still here. But he's trying to pull me back. Hurry. My hands trembled as I lowered the letter. The cellar. Of course. The old mirror. We had found it tucked against the far wall when we moved in, a strange, warped piece, with beveled edges and a hairline crack through its center like a wound that never healed. Eleanor covered it almost immediately. Bad energy, she'd said. It sees too much. We hadn't touched it since. I lit a lantern and descended the stairs. The air grew colder with each step. Not the chill of stone and age, this was unnatural, like a breath held for too long. The cellar welcomed me with silence. The kind that lives in cathedrals and graves. The mirror stood at the far end, still draped in the old black sheet Eleanor had thrown over it. Cobwebs clung to the corners. The floor around it was littered with broken glass. I hadn't shattered it. Eleanor had. And she'd missed. The mirror still stood intact beneath the cloth. I stepped forward, lifted the sheet. And froze. The mirror did not reflect me. It reflected Eleanor. Standing alone in our bedroom, her back to me, staring into her own reflection. But her reflection was smiling, and she wasn't. She turned to look over her shoulder. And the moment her eyes met mine in the glass, she whispered, "Don't let him in." The mirror cracked. A single jagged line running from top to bottom. And behind my own reflection, his. Simon. Watching me with eyes far too dark to be human. I dropped the lantern. The flame snuffed out. The cellar plunged into darkness. And from somewhere in the walls, a voice whispered, "Not hers. She was never just yours." Chapter 21, The Earth Moves Where She Lies. I ran from the cellar. Not in panic, but with the kind of urgency that comes when something ancient and wrong begins to stir in the bones of a house. The image in the mirror haunted me, not Eleanor's, but his. Simon's reflection, carved in shadows and smirking like he'd been waiting behind every wall, every whisper, every moment of silence I'd mistaken for grief. He had been here all along. Watching me. Watching us. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in the parlor with every candle lit, Eleanor's letters fanned out across the table like tarot cards, each one pulsing with memory. The air felt thick, like the house was listening. Listening for her. Listening for him. And then, just after 3 in the morning, the grandfather clock, long silenced, chimed. Once. Twice. Then silence. Then a sound I hadn't heard in years. The old garden bell. It hung near the back gate, rusted and useless, a relic from another age. It hadn't rung since before Eleanor died, not even in storms. But that night, it sang. A soft, hollow peal. Once. Then again. Calling me. I stood, heart thudding, and stepped into the cold. The garden path was overgrown, but the air had shifted. The roses, which had bloomed impossibly only days before, now hung limp. Their petals wilted, their color bled into ash. The vines clung tighter to the arbor as though bracing for something that moved beneath. And then I saw it. Her grave. Not as I remembered. The earth, it had shifted again. But this time, it hadn't settled. It had opened. A crack, subtle and jagged, running the length of the plot. The ground looked torn, not dug, not disturbed, but split. As though something beneath had pressed upward. As though her name on the stone had begun to mean something new. I fell to my knees beside it. The scent of violets lingered, crushed and damp. And there, resting in the fissure of the soil, untouched by mud or decay. A letter. Folded. Bound with a black ribbon. I lifted it carefully, hands trembling not from cold, but from the terrible certainty that whatever I was about to read would change everything. It was Eleanor's handwriting. But the ink was smudged. As if the paper had been held by shaking hands, or wet ones. Matthew. He's growing stronger. I tried to bury him. In memory. In silence. But memory fades, and silence opens doors. I found him first. Long before you. Before us. Before I knew how to name what followed me from the old house on Ashgrove Hill. Simon was never flesh. He was the part of me that never left that house. The voice that wrote before I learned to speak. The shadow that walked behind me in every mirror. He wanted me to forget you. To forget warmth. But you made me remember. And now he wants to take that from you. He thinks I belong to him. He's wrong. You must not open the last letter until the bell tolls a third time. When it does, you'll know where to go. And you must come quickly. Because I don't know how much longer the earth will hold me. And if he rises, I may not be the one who answers you next. The letter slipped from my hand. The crack in the earth widened slightly. Just an inch. But enough to release a sound. A whisper from the soil. Not hers. Not mine. Matthew. But the voice was wrong. Too low. Too hollow. As though spoken through water, or stone, or teeth not meant for speaking. I stumbled back. The garden bell rang once more. And then silence. No wind. No birds. Just the whispering of roots shifting beneath a name no longer resting. Chapter 22, A Knock from Beneath. I didn't go inside. Not right away. I stood at the edge of the cracked grave, the letter trembling in my hand, the words repeating in my mind like a forgotten lullaby turned warning. You must come quickly. I don't know how much longer the earth will hold me. The soil beneath Eleanor's grave had shifted again. Not collapsed, not disturbed, opened. That fine, jagged crack now curved like a question mark across the plot. I knelt beside it, half expecting to see roots, or stones, or the blank hush of earth. But it wasn't silence that met me. It was sound. Knocking. 3 slow, deliberate raps, from below. I staggered back. It wasn't the knock of bone or stone. It was knuckles. Human. Alive? No, remembering. And then another sound followed, a long, low moan of wood. The coffin. Her coffin. Pressed from the inside. The bell at the back gate rang once, twice. I turned to look. The gate remained closed, yet the bell swayed gently. There was no wind. Not even breath. I ran. Back through the overgrown path, through the heavy hush of the house, into the study. I threw open every drawer, searching for the last letter, the one Eleanor told me not to open until the bell tolled 3 times. But it wasn't there. It was waiting for me on the writing desk. Unfolded. Blank. I stepped closer. And the ink began to bloom. Word by word. Her handwriting, unfolding before my eyes. It's happening. I'm losing him, Matthew. He's sinking into me again, clawing at what I tried to leave behind. I'm trying to hold him back. But the grave no longer listens to memory. The veil is thinning. The house remembers you. It remembers us. But it also remembers him. When the bell tolls 3 times, come to the garden. Bring the ring. Bring the diary. And bring the letter you found from Simon. I will be there. But you must speak my name. Say it the way you did when we danced in the attic. The way you did when you first called me yours. Say it before he does. And then the 3rd chime rang. Clear. Final. Like a heartbeat stilled. The grandfather clock struck once, though it had no reason to. And in the reflection of the study mirror. Not me. Not Eleanor. But him. Simon. Smiling. And behind him, her hand. Pressed to the glass. Pleading. The knock came again. Not from the door. Not from the window. From the floor. Directly beneath my feet. A single, muffled knock. Then another. And then her voice. Matthew. Not a whisper. Not a memory. Her voice. Calling to me. But behind it, lead like breath over ice. Let me in. Not hers. His. Chapter 23, The Final Reply. The garden was not as I left it. The air pulsed with a weight I could feel in my teeth, an ache that pressed behind my eyes like the coming of a storm. The roses, dead hours before, had bloomed again, but wrong. Their petals shimmered not with color, but shadow. The vines reached higher, twisting toward the sky like they were trying to climb out of the world. The arbor stood open. The soil before Eleanor's grave churned slowly, like something sleeping just below the surface was beginning to stir in time with my heartbeat. I clutched the diary in one hand, her ring in the other, and the letter from Simon pressed against my chest. The 3rd chime echoed still. I stepped closer. And the ground fell silent. No knock. No whisper. No breath. Just a stillness that dared me to speak. I dropped to my knees. Pressed the diary against the earth. Whispered her name. Eleanor. Nothing. The wind stilled. The sky darkened. I closed my eyes and remembered the attic, the way she looked when we danced in flickering candlelight, the sound of her laughter folded into the spaces between the notes. The way her hand fit into mine. The way she whispered, always. I said her name again. Eleanor Blythe. My wife. My love. My ghost and my girl. The ground shifted. A breath. Not wind, breath. From beneath. And then the earth cracked open. Just wide enough. I saw her hand first. Pale. Still wearing the ring I buried her with. It rose through the soil, reaching, shaking. And then, her voice. Clear. Weakened. But hers. Matthew, help me. I reached for her. But another hand rose beside it. Larger. Twisted. Fingers longer than they should be, joints bent like roots, nails blackened by centuries of memory. Simon. He rose from the ground as if pulled by the house itself, as if the soil no longer knew what it meant to hold him back. His face was a hollow echo of mine, features like mine twisted into something older, crueler, hungry. You don't know what she is, he said, his voice like leaves crushed beneath iron. You only know what you wanted her to be. I know her, I whispered. I chose her. And she chose me first, he said, stepping forward, dragging the shadows with him. She wrote to me before she wrote to you. She loved me when you were still learning to say her name. He raised his hand toward me. The diary in my arms burst open, pages fluttering violently in a wind that didn't touch the trees. And then, a voice. Hers. From the pages. From the air. Finish the letter, Matthew. My heart caught. I grabbed the letter from Simon, the one sealed in ash, and forced it into the diary. The moment it touched the page, the earth shook. Simon screamed. Not from pain. From fury. And Eleanor pulled herself from the ground. Not whole. But returning. Her face streaked with soil and tears. Eyes locked on mine. She reached for my hand. And I took it. The diary blazed white. And then, silence. Darkness. Stillness. When I awoke, I was in the attic. Alone. The mirror before me. But this time, only me in the glass. And resting beside me, a final letter. Folded in the diary. In her hand. Matthew. Asterisk, you brought me back. Not to life. Not to flesh. But to memory. And that's enough. I remember the garden. I remember the dance. I remember you. He's gone. For now. But memory is fragile. You must write. Keep writing. Don't let me fade again. We don't need forever. We just need to remember. Yours. Always. Eleanor. And outside. The roses began to bloom. The right color. Blood red. And the house exhaled.
Every story has an ending, but some mysteries live on. If you enjoyed this tale, don't let it fade into the shadows. Smash that like button and subscribe for more thrilling stories that will transport you beyond the veil of the ordinary. Subscribe to our channel and your name will appear at the beginning of our next video, where we will pleasantly thank you for your subscribing. Tap the bell icon so you never miss a journey into the unknown. Share your thoughts in the comments. What twists did you see coming? And what secrets do you think still remain? Until next time, stay curious, stay brave, and let the next story begin.